Hard to believe, but it's been 10 years since the so-called Chase Utley rule was implemented. Rule 601J states, sliding to bases on double play attempts. If a runner does not engage in a bona fide slide and initiates or attempts to make contact with the fielder for the purpose of breaking up a double play, he should be called for interference under this Rule 601. The rule then goes into specifics on what a bona fide slide actually means. The rule, of course, was implemented in response to a Chase Utley slide in the 2015 NLDS Game 2 when Utley slid into Ruben Tejada and broke his leg. Ruben was never quite the same after that.
Up the middle, gloved by Murphy. There's one, and they will not get the double play. Wow, did Chase Utley go in hard at second as the tying run scores. Tejada looked like a receiver coming over the middle, having his feet knocked out from under him by a defensive back. Check this out.
This was going to be a tough turn anyway. The ball behind second base, he was going to turn that way to make a throw. Utley got off on a great secondary lead, and he gets right there to break up the double play.
Didn't even start sliding till he was even with the bag.
Many people viewed Chase Utley as a dirty player. Maybe, I don't know. I didn't play against the guy. But what I do know is that sliding and trying to take out the middle infielder on a double play was commonplace. It was pretty much expected by a base runner. If you look at that play, the level of violence by Chase Utley in that slide really wasn't anything unusual. It was just bad luck, the way that Tejada turned, and it just got ugly. I referenced that play because it resulted in the rule change, but I really want to talk about a play that happened in the 1973 National League Championship Series.
42 years earlier.
The Big Red Machine had not yet won a World Series under manager Sparky Anderson. They lost in the World Series in 1970 to the Orioles, and then lost in the World Series in 71 to the A's, then found themselves in a battle with the Mets in the 73 NLCS. The series was tied heading into Game 3 with Jerry Koosman facing off against Ross Grimsley. The Mets jumped out to an early lead, capped by a Rusty Staub home run that put the Mets up 6-0 after just 2 innings. The Reds were getting frustrated, and by the end of the fourth, the score was 9-2 Mets. In the top of the fifth, Pete Rose singled to center field, and when Joe Morgan hit a ground ball to first baseman John Milner, Rose went into second, intent on breaking up the double play. Shortstop Bud Harrelson, who had made a comment after Game 2 about the Reds' weak hitting, was about to get up close and personal with Charlie Hustle.
Ground ball hit down to first base. Milner has it, throws to Buddy Harrelson, one to first, double play! And a fight breaks out. Pete Rose and Buddy Harrelson, both clubs spill out of the dugouts, and a wild fight is going on. Jerry Koosman's in the middle of the fight. Everybody is out there. Buddy Harrelson and Pete Rose got into it. Rose apparently thought that Harrelson had done something in making the double play. Rose outweighs Harrelson about 35 pounds. And now, Buzzy Capra is in a fight. Capra's in a fight out in center field. Another fight breaks out.
My friend Mike joined me to talk about this game. Many people in the vintage baseball card community and the YouTube community know Mike, and he's a great guy. He's been offline for a while, and I hope you'll stick around to the end to hear some personal notes from him and what he's working on. You had approached me about the 1973 NLCS, and in particular, the fight between Pete Rose and Bud Harrelson.
Well, I liked the Reds back in the day. The major teams, you couldn't help but not like them. I mean, they had all the stars on them, right? I mean, you had the Reds, the A's, Orioles. It was hard not to like them. But in later years now, as I collect, one of the things I collect, or a couple of things I collect, are famous teams and famous events or plays. And that, I consider that a famous event. If it's worthy of getting in something like a documentary, then if I can collect it, I will. It was fifth inning of Game 3. It was tied up 1-1 as far as the series went, Game 1 was a 2-1 victory for the Reds against Tom Seaver, which, he was terrific. He was in the peak of his career. It's a great game. Lost 2-1. Second game, the Mets came out and rolled over them 5-0, and it was after the game that kind of caused what led up to this is that Bud Harrelson was being interviewed by some reporters, and he made the comment, and I'll paraphrase, that the Reds were hitting like he does. He does meaning Harrelson, and Harrelson was considered a very weak hitting shortstop. I guess beginning to game 3 in the batter's cage when they were taking batting practice, Joe Morgan came over and expressed his displeasure over those comments. But after they talked, they seemed to kind of smooth things over. But of course, Pete Rose was kind of a hothead anyway. And so, fifth inning, and Joe Morgan up with Pete Rose on first. Ground ball to Milner at first, and he goes to second base. Hits Rose, but Rose barrel rolled in and actually shoved Harrelson. Harrelson actually completed the double play, which probably really pissed off Pete Rose. Anyway, Rose jumped up and they started fighting. Some words were said, obviously, leading up to that. And then the benches, emptied, and they had a couple other, as most baseball fights, you'll have little skirmishes within, and surprisingly, nobody was thrown out. And in those days, I think the umpires were a little more lenient, especially during the playoffs.
Yeah.
They didn't want to throw,
exactly.
They didn't want to ruin the series by ejecting some key players. Funny thing is, well, the Mets went on to win the game 9-2. So, but the pot was boiling, and the Reds were really pissed. But the Reds were pissed. The Mets, they had won just in '69 the whole thing. The Reds, up to that point, they had been to the series the year after in '70, and then they went in '72. Both times they got beat, so they were out to prove something. Game 4 was another win by the Reds to tie it up, but that was only 2-1 also, same score as game 1 when they won. So they weren't exactly hitting like a ton for a team that had some pretty good power on it. And that game went 12 innings. The funny thing is, if Harrelson and Rose had got kicked out and maybe suspended a game, that would have possibly caused the outcome of game 4 to change, because it was Rose who hit a home run top of the 12th that put them ahead 2-1, and then they won the game. So then in game 5, the Mets won 7-2. So you can see of the 3 games the Mets won, they won substantially, by a good margin. The 2 games the Reds won, both 2-1. So, but it's always been kind of a David and Goliath kind of thing there. I think Harrelson was about $150, $160 maybe, as far as weight. And Rose, I never thought of Rose as a big guy, when I was a kid watching him play. But, he was about 200 pounds, pretty much all muscle. Yeah, yeah, exactly. He moved good. He was quick, but he was carrying 200 pounds of muscle on him. So it was definitely a thing that would spark the Mets. Even though they lost the following game, it was a close one, and I think the Reds knew, taking 12 innings to win in game 4, that they had their hands full, and the Mets came out, of course, game 5 and won the game, and took the A's in the World Series to 7 games. So they were close. There obviously was some simmering bad blood there from previous years. And I didn't notice this until recently. There's a Sports Illustrated cover from September 7th, 1970, I think it is. And it's got a picture of Harrelson, like looking like he's he's made the out at second base, but he's looking to see, where else to throw it in the infield. And on the ground behind him, with a look of astonishment, is Pete Rose. So Pete Rose is obviously slid hard. Can't believe that he didn't, take him out. And I just wonder if, Rose did that so many times in the past that Harrelson was just done with that. He had to stand up, and especially in the playoffs, you don't want to have your shortstop, whether he's a good hitter or not, he's a good shortstop. You don't want him being taken out of the series. And we all know what Rose did to Fossey in the All-Star game.
So you have this still image here, autographed by both players. How did you get this?
I actually sent for this from a third party. Actually, it's got the Pete Rose authentication on it, so it was from a show that he had done.
Oh, okay.
And then it's hard to find a good one. There's a lot of black and white ones, but not a lot of color ones. And this is a ticket stub from that game. Usually, what I'll do is if I have a photo and a ticket or a photo and an autograph separately, I'll mat and frame those. But I'm running out of wall space, as you can kind of see here, and this is my secondary memorabilia room. So I'm going to put it on a shelf together and as a little mini display.
Joe Morgan, kind of an adult in the room, wouldn't you say? Like he wasn't the kind of guy who was out looking for fights. So the fact that he approached Bud in the batting cage the morning of just tells me that he just wanted some clarification. He wasn't looking to pick a fight or anything at BP.
No, but I agree with exactly what you're saying. He was always considered, I don't know if peacemaker is the right type of thing, but yeah, he the most level-headed, and which I think is why he went on to have such a successful career in the broadcast booth too. I mean, he wasn't not flamboyant, but he wasn't derisive to all the other players and stuff. I mean, he was a good addition to the broadcasting booth. I think for those reasons. Funny thing, Joe Morgan. The one time I went to Cooperstown, we were waiting in line for autograph show, which was in a smallish little house. You got up there and you got through, and you had to go through another door that was closed. I opened the door, and it's like, you're not expecting anything, but here's Joe Morgan ready to come through the other side. And it was just like, normally I'd be going, It was just like, oh, hi, Mr. Morgan. I mean, you couldn't mistake him. I mean, I'm 6'2", and he looked like he was like 5'6".
Oh, wow.
I think he was a little taller than that, but he was Little Joe was his nickname, and that was appropriate.
It's interesting to note that in 1978, the Mets traded Harrelson to the Phillies to play second base. A year later, the Phillies also signed Pete to play first base, putting the two buddies right next to each other on the diamond in the city of brotherly love. There doesn't seem to have been any lingering animosity, but I am working on a video about Ray Fosse, and I don't think the same can be said about him. Fosse had lingering shoulder pain that never really went away after his own collision with Pete. And finally, I referenced this earlier, but Mike has been dealing with some life stuff and has been quiet on YouTube for a while. I asked him if he wanted to talk about it, and he had this to share. You've been offline for a little while. I know you had some personal things going on, and there are a lot of people in the community who care about you. So I didn't know if you wanted to say anything about that.
I appreciate that. My sister was sick for a little over 3 months. She was in the hospital, in and out of the hospital, but she never did go back home. She passed away on July 4th, and we just had her funeral last week. And basically, I've only had since like February. I've only had like 2 videos, and those were 2 I could cobble together real quickly, like the All-Star vote and I had one video out with which was my birthday, which was actually exactly a week before she passed away. I had a little extra time that day, so I put out some stuff that I had received as gifts. But yeah, it was kind of a surprise. She passed away pretty quick, 3 months in the grand scheme of things when you're not really sick, until the time you step into the hospital. That's pretty quick. So she didn't suffer really. She wasn't happy about being in the hospital, but I don't think any of us would.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing that. Like I said, I know, we've got a group of guys that text you, and of course, you're on the discourse thing, and people aren't always, aware of what's going on in everybody's lives. But yeah, I'm glad you're back. I'm sorry about what happened. Hopefully, her family, your family, can get past it. But it's tough, man. Yeah.
It is. She was we were the last two of the siblings that were still around, of five. So now I'm the only one left.
Wow.
It's pretty tough. And let me just tell everybody, this may seem kind of obvious, but today's healthcare is not like it used to be. If you're my age or even a little bit younger, healthcare used to be so much better. You are so lucky if you find a good doctor when you're in the hospital. Let me tell you, it's not like the old days.
We got to catch up, Chuck. There she goes.